So this is 1 minute late. The edition timed at 09:20 GMT of the Khoodeelaar television channel being broadcast only on the internet under the banner of the Baby Angel Geronimo editions. Baby Angel Geronimo is the world's bestest witness. Baby Angel Geronimo was born and brought up by Leonie Walker in New Zealand before the baby angel Geronimo traveled to South Gloucestershire in England to join the family of Helen MacDonald. And we've been running with every edition an updated commentary on the baby angel Geronimo's witness. And we shall continue to do so it is not avoided. And the reason for this is the choice made by most Muslims with wealth and resources and means to be selfish, greedy, and corrupt, and not to share with the people who are hungry the wealth that they have. Sacrificing an animal was, of course, the original symbolic ritual that was introduced at the beginning. But I think that the Muslims have no reason to embrace the principle of sharing in a meaningful way so that the people who are hungry and are without can feel the actual compassion and sharing by those who have. We shall be talking about Eid al Adha extensively during this week, and we shall continue beyond. And we shall be doing that by also emphasizing The particular campaign that I have started in 2019, End Hunger at Root. And I think that Muslims who have, if they actually give up enough of their wealth in a planned, thoughtful, compassionate, consistent, ethical, and moral way, by looking at the needs of the people who are going without and addressing those needs by sharing, then I believe that a very significant part of the poverty and hunger in the world today would disappear. So, this is the message that this program will be seeking to create with this week's introduction, which starts with this edition. And this is consistent with the baby angel Geronimo's purpose, which is to end injustice and cruelty and criminality by those who make decisions, by holding positions in government posts. Baby angel Geronimo is uniquely experienced about the misbehavior, misconduct, licensed law traders. Baby angel Geronimo was denied support by the liar Boris Johnson, by the liar Steve Keir Starmer. And baby angel Geronimo was misrepresented in 2021 by the criminal midget Jan Pissoff, who is the so-called editor of the Private Eye. And baby angel Geronimo was misreported by the criminal son, the crook, the overfed Nigel Lye's son's overfed son, Dominic Lye's son. Despite the fact that the biological father, Stanley Johnson, the biological father of the congenital liar Boris Johnson, was featured in 2021 in the Murdoch scam as expressing an opinion that baby angel Geronimo should not be demonized and targeted and lied about. That was the one-off thing that Stanley Johnson did. He stopped repeating that or updating that. And I believe that Stanley Johnson was told off by the criminal Boris Johnson. And Stanley Johnson would not hesitate to follow the criminal, cruel line that the criminal, congenital liar Boris Johnson would have told him to follow. Because when the statement by the anti-Muslim Boris Johnson came to dominate the news about his having expressed the opinion that Muslim women who wear burqas resembled bank robbers. And the people who observed that Johnson was being nasty disrespectful. Stanley Johnson, along with his daughter, made himself to the British media, saying the same scripted line. They both said exactly the identical same sentence, that in making his anti Muslim, criminal, cruel, hateful comment about women, Boris Johnson had not gone far enough. That shows that Stanley Johnson has no scruples, no morality, no ethics whatsoever, and no real judgment at all. Stanley Johnson and Rachel Johnson, again, featured in the original dishonors list compiled by the congenital liar Boris Johnson. The very sleazy, corrupt criminal kind of culture. So baby angel Geronimo has been witnessing all of that. So baby angel Geronimo is the barometer, the moral, ethical barometer for all the injustice, criminality, misuse, cruelty, lack of compassion, selfishness, abuse of positions that the likes of Christian evilness, middle miss, the DEFRA evilness perpetrate. For the sake of all the innocent animals defamed by DEFRA, we shall continue to update with every bulletin containing an appropriate update by the baby angel Geronimo. And in the context of the Eid al Adha, there could not be more fitting combination. The rights of the innocent animals, the rights of the animals, the needs of the animals to be treated with compassion and love could not be emphasized too strongly. And baby angel Geronimo is the witness and the champion and the advocate of this message. So we say to the Muslims who have, that is, who have the wealth, who have the resources anywhere, to stop abusing their position with their resources and to start sharing in a meaningful way and genuinely sharing what they have with, first of all, the Muslims that are starving, are homeless, are destitute, and then also help other people who are not necessarily Muslims but are being denied justice and denied fairness and denied shelter, genuine shelter. We shall be, of course, updating on all of these in every edition. Now, today's papers, as I said, some of them contain the reference to Stephen Lawrence. Stephen Lawrence was a teenager who was murdered by a gang of white racists while Stephen was waiting for a bus not far from his home in the Eltham area in southeast London. That was in April 1993. Now, this is 30 years plus since the racists murdered Stephen. Only by a sheer coincidence did Stephen's murder become more noted in the British media than it would have. And that coincidence was the fact that Stephen's father, Neville Lawrence, as a at that time, as up to that time, as a person who earned his living as a decorator, was known to the editor of the Daily Mail, Paul Decker. And Paul Decker got the information from Neville Lawrence about all the things that Neville Lawrence alone could tell anyone. And based on that exclusive access, and of course his proximity with Neville Lawrence as a person who was working for him, Paul Decker ran that story on the front page of the Daily Mail and named the murderers as murderers and called them murderers in a front page splash in the Daily Mail and invited the murderers to sue the Daily Mail. Of course, the murderers never sued the Daily Mail. They couldn't and they wouldn't. But that was a landmark item of event, journalism so called, in the entire history of Fleet Street, which is racist, in the history of the Daily Mail, which is the leading racist paper, in the career of Paul Decker, who is a leading racist liar. But that particular coverage, of course, helped the circulation of the Daily Mail and also helped the publication of the details in other organs. But that's it. As Stephen's mom has to say every time she is able to give an opinion on how the London Metropolitan Police allowed the racists to get away. She was asked this week after the BBC investigated and found a sixth suspect. Matthew White had been allowed by the London Metropolitan Police, the local police force, to get away. And Doreen Lawrence, Stephen's mom, is now reported as saying the Metropolitan Police didn't do the job a journalist now has done and found the evidence. If the Metropolitan Police had done their job, which the journalist has now done, that the police would have found the murderer. Now, the details of the London Metropolitan Police, time and again, serially choosing not to find the known, identifiable, findable murders of Stephen Lawrence. The details are out there in the public domain now. And the details related to Matthew White show that it wasn't just the murderers that murdered Stephen Lawrence. The Metropolitan Police, the Crown Prosecution Service, and the leading post holders in the Metropolitan Police, including Cressida Dick, they united to frustrate, the catching, the prosecuting, and the convicting of Stephen Lawrence's murderers. So when the Times gives this column to a notorious racist woman, what is her name? I have called her notorious racist woman, but I haven't given her name. I haven't given her name because I don't want to give the wrong name. So this is a Melanie Phillips. Melanie Phillips, who looks with her hair significantly changed, used to work at the Guardian. When she was working at the Guardian, she had, if I remember correctly, black hair, and she never, if I remember correctly, expressed any opinion that was racist in the way that she has become notorious for since leaving the Guardian and becoming a writer, columnist, and contributor through the Daily Mail, the Murdoch newspapers, including the Times. And today's piece, byline to Melanie Phillips, reads, "Incompetence, not racism, caused Met Police's failures." Now, why would she be so concerned about denying racism? What has she got for racists? Why is she so concerned about denying the part that racism plays in denying justice to black people? Of course, Melanie Phillips is a racist herself. That is the first point. And secondly, she is a dedicated anti Muslim inciter of hatred against Muslims. But she is not just anti Muslim hate inciter, she is also anti black, that is to say, anti African people, anti Asian people. And despite the fact that a white woman like Louise Casey found the Metropolitan Police as a racist organization and found that because of the organization being racist, the treatment by the London Metropolitan Police, the racist force, according to Louise Casey, of black people, that is African people, Asian people, was significantly impacted by the police's racist policies, racist attitude, racist personnel. It is a pattern. It's a pattern that can be seen in the behavior of Free Street editors, editorial commissioners. Whenever there is an issue that factually, evidentially, truthfully deserves to be reported by telling the truth about how, let's say in this case, the Metropolitan Police has been aggravating the racists murdering Stephen Lawrence by creating endless excuses and pretexts to fail, to refuse to do the prosecuting, and to let the murderers of Stephen Lawrence unpunished, remain outside the requirements of justice. The various quotes that are attributed to Stephen Lawrence, says mom, Doreen Lawrence, and his dad, Neville Lawrence. By definition, they are exclusive in the sense that they are the parents, that they knew their son. And the loss of Stephen Lawrence to them cannot be just replicated by expressing sympathy and solidarity. That loss is permanent, and that loss is severely painful to them, both of them. Having said all of that, they cannot be and should not be expected to become experts on the entirety of the British society, British state. They are not lawyers, they are not experts. Their importance and significance mainly comes from the fact that they are the Stephen's parents. That does not make them experts on other aspects of the United Kingdom. Now, as a decades long student of English British legal bureaucracies, legal training, legal education, etc., legal careers, I can say that other than the fact that they are the parents of Stephen Lawrence, these two correctly, overwhelmingly pain, suffering parents. Other than the fact that they are the parents suffering, they cannot be expected to bring an explanation as to why the police failed and why the rest of the British state failed. And the answer is not a mystery. The entirety of the British state is racist. The judiciary is racist. The media is racist. The licensed law traders are racist. The parliament is racist. The government is racist. And all of these people and their ancestors were racist when the British Empire carried out the imperial massacres and genocides and criminality in the subcontinent and in Africa. Whenever they talk about the sadness, like Pipa Krira is the overhyped, currently overhyped political editor of The Guardian, and she appeared on the Sky News press preview slot last night, previewing the Fleet Street papers of today, Tuesday, the 27th of June 2023. Pipa Krira's main point, based on the revelation by the BBC journalist, that Matthew White was the sixth suspect who should have been caught, who should have been prosecuted, who should have been convicted, etc. So the fact that she says it's all so sad gives the game away. It is not an emotional, no matter how understandable the position of emotional solidarity is or can be. It's not an emotional issue. Why should it be reduced to a sad incident when the actual perpetrators of the injustice, the cover up and the lies and the denials after the fact were to be found in successive holders of vital, powerful positions in the London Metropolitan Police, in the Crown Prosecution Service? What did the Director of Public Prosecutions, what did the Director of Public Prosecutions, who was in post as the Director of Public Prosecutions in charge of the Crown Prosecution Service for 5 years during this century, what did that particular one, who is called Keir Starmer, what did he do? Did he investigate? And did he get involved in the claim now being ascribed to the Crown Prosecution Service? That they, the Crown Prosecution Service, knew about Matthew White being one of the suspects, but they took a decision against prosecuting him on the unproven basis that the likelihood of Matthew White being found guilty was small. How did they know that? Unless they also knew that the likelihood of a racist being found guilty was given as a very small likelihood in the racist judicial system, prosecution system that they all took part in and were all part of. So the fact that they didn't follow the known lines of inquiries that came before them at the time, the fact that they did know various connections, including one reported incident of a relation, not named but a relative, who knew where Matthew White was on the night that Stephen Lawrence was murdered. And that relative, whose gender has not been identified, told the police that according to that relative's knowledge, Matthew White was at the scene where Stephen Lawrence was murdered. Now, that to any forensic student of forensic science would know that that is a very strong, clear, strong lead that would be capable of being used as a central focus for any advocate, prosecution, to build a case against him. But they didn't even try. They concluded, they predicted, they decided on failure even before they prosecuted him. What part of what chapter of the book of prosecutions prescribes that when such lines of evidence exist, the prosecution should be abandoned? Now, that relative of Matthew White was not contacted for 20 years. And that relative only came to existence when this BBC investigation by a journalist took place in the last few months. So, the investigation that should have been done by the police was not done. The police gave it up. And it was only re-investigated by a non-police individual, a journalist. Now, what the journalist was in possession of course, came to his possession or their possession, her possession, because of their starting the investigation. But those were not invented facts. Those facts did exist. And those facts were left untouched, unexplored, because nobody wanted to explore them. Nobody wanted to test the veracity of the statement of the relative. I mean, how did Pippa Creeder think that her calling it a sad thing was consistent with the findings of Louis Casey? Louis Casey, whose review of the Metropolitan Police found overwhelming evidence of racism at every stage, in the operational behavior, in the policies of the London Metropolitan Police. How could the political editor of the Guardian forget all of those, ignore all of those evidence, and settle for the word sadness? It is sad. Sad is reserved for those without any option or knowledge. Now, the police The London Metropolitan Police is one of the world's most powerfully resourced organizations, not just Britain, not just Europe, the whole world's most powerful police forces. Shouldn't the political editor of The Guardian have asked what were the Metropolitan Police doing when they were abandoning that case? And then there is this revelation today in a separate report about the English cricket and English cricket. Let's check on the actual report that talks about racism again today. This is the one. I'm already faced with the headline on this. Racist, sexist, and elitist. Landmark reports damning verdict on English cricket. Not just a few bad apples. Digested the damning ICEC report's key findings and recommendations. The ICEC stands for Independent Commission for Equity in Cricket, has delivered its 317-page report. Here are the main takeaways, says the Guardian. It's a piece head byline to James Wallis and timed at 0001 British Standard Time, which would be 2301 on Monday, the 26th of June 2023. A deep seated issue of racism continues in cricket. The report's overview is damning. It states that racism in cricket is not confined to pockets or a few bad apples, and neither is it limited to individual incidents of misconduct. The evidence is unequivocal. Racism is a serious issue in cricket. Racism, in all its forms, continues to shape the experience of and opportunities for many in the game. And that is on page 10 of the report. And the second item on page 11, based on the contents of page 11, racism is normalized, lack of trust or discrimination. 50% of respondents to this described experiencing discrimination in the previous 5 years. And then the figures were substantially higher for people from ethnically diverse communities. 87% of people with Pakistani and Bangladeshi heritage. 87 of the people with Pakistani and Bangladeshi heritage. 82% of the people with Indian heritage. And 75% of all black respondents. That's on page 11. When outlining the complaints procedure in chapter 8 of the report, the authors of the report quote a high level of dissatisfaction with the process when people reported discrimination. But 1% were satisfied, reducing to 9% of complaints by ethnically diverse people. That is on page 190. Lack of representation and structural barriers. The report states in cricket's most senior leadership, South Asian representation is limited to 2.8, despite South Asians making up 28 to 29% of the game's adult recreational population and 6.9% of the population of England and Wales. That is on page 59. Statistics imply that in total, ethnically diverse representation comprises only 5.6% of leadership in cricket, while comprising 18.3% of the English and Wales population, and in the region of 30 to 35% of recreational cricket players. And it goes on, and it goes on, and it goes on. It says, another headline says, cricket has failed black communities. And the English Cricket Board's response has been slow. And there are lots and lots and lots of 317 pages, lots of information and data. So Melanie Phillips, why is she given the spot by the Times today? Incompetence, not racism. She is openly, brazenly lying. So we shall come back to Melanie Phillips and the Metropolitan Police's racism and the silence by the Crown Prosecution Service as to why it discouraged prosecution of the known criminals. Then there is this comment in the Times today, in the Thunderer, where Jawad Iqbal is a freelance writer and he's saying that Diana's elder son, William, should leave homelessness issues to the politicians. I could not agree more. The whole thing about Williams ending homelessness is not only ridiculous, infantile, irresponsible, insulting, and stupid. It is a criminally outrageous affront to the people who experience racism, who experience homelessness, who experience the systematic corruption and criminality perpetrated by the causers of homelessness and housing shortage. We shall be talking about all of those in due course. For the time being, we are ending at 10:10 GMT, which is 48 minutes, this edition.